Hilchis Mechirah Pedig Shnayim V'Esrim. Eino de makne dova shlei bo'elam. A person can't be makne something which is not bo'elam yet. And as we learn behemshech, that even if it is bo'elam, but it's not in your possession, also you're not able to be maknet. Now that din is bein b'mecher, bein b'matona, bein b'matos chivmira. Ketzad, mashatoitzi soda zu mochra l'cha. This is a case of mecher. He's selling him what this field will produce. So since it didn't produce it yet, it's a dova shlei bo'elam, so the mecher doesn't work. Or Mashiyotzi Ilon Zen Nosnucha. There's a case of Matana saying what this tree will produce, I'm giving to you. That also doesn't work. And also Tnu Mashatel Behema Zulu Planis. That's a case of a Matna Shchiv Mira. So even though by Matna Shchiv Mira normally it doesn't even need a Maisakinyan, and the Dvarim is already Kiksuvim Kimsurim, but Bamed Dvarim Amurim if it was Ba'ilam. Mashainkin if it's not Ba'ilam, he says Mashatel Behema Zulu Tnu Leplani is Leikon Klum V'chen Kol Kietz B'zeh. And as the Torah says that this din of Mashatelet Behemazu, Tnula Plani, doesn't work, is even if the Behema is Mu'beres. So even though the din is L'mashal, if a father has his wife is Mu'beres, someone's wife is Mu'beres, and Lepel it's a daughter, she's Mu'beres with a daughter, and the father was Mekadesh this Uber, while it was already Hukar Uber, so the din she is Mukudeshes. So that din is only a Drabonin Dikadin. But Be'etzim on Uber is considered a Dover Shlei Bo'elam, and since it's considered a Dover Shlei Bo'elam, so if you're selling the Uber that of the Behema, you're saying that Shnu, Mashatelet Behema Zula Pleni, is Leikon a Klum, and as we said, the Torah says that that's even if the Behema was already Mu'beres. Halacha Beis, Hamoicher Peiris Dekel L'Chavere, person sells Peiris Dekel L'Chavere, which is a Dover Shlei Bo'elam, is yochel lachzer be'ach l'achar shebo ha'peres le'elam, because the pill, since the kinyan wasn't chal, so even though the peres are ba'elam, nevertheless the kinyan is not chal. However, v'im shomat ha'lekech v'ochel, after the peres were bo le'elam, the lekech was shomat, is ein mitzim yod, because it's psanan sadi that lepel, a person wants to be like a naman, and since he made up that he's selling these peres, the pale now these peres are here ba'elam, so it's anan sadi that he wants that he should be kaina with the tfisa. And therefore is ein mitzim yod. You know, it's to say that he has to give it to him. There was no ma'asakinyan, so he really doesn't have to give it to him. But on the other end, if he was teifasit, so we say anan sadi that he was nicholei, that he should be kind with the kinyan in order for him to be considered a ish naman, and therefore you can't be mitzi it from the lekeach, which was the teifas. That's the number one. Then the Ram continues, v'chol ha'chezer be'mishnayim. Now, as a person bought something, a moicher peiris dekel l'chaveri, and lepel he paid money for it. And then one of them had charata, so the din is ein chayiv l'kal mishapara. And the pashtus hadvarim is because lepel there was no ma'asakinyan, and since there was no ma'asakinyan, so it wasn't really a kinyan. So when kesef would be kainim and hatera, there's a normal case when kesef is kainim and hatera by metaltalin. Just midrabon kesef is not kaina. So when someone has charata, so then there's a mishapara. Mashayin over here, when he was buying with kesef something which is leibal le'elam, so mele be'etzim, it was no ma'asakinyan at all, so therefore for having charata, he doesn't deserve a mishapara. Halacha gimel. Now, this din of amecha peiris dekel l'chavere is brought down that it's different than when you get amecher the uber of a behema. When you get the uber of a behema, even though the behema was mu'beres, but lepel the uber is considered a davar shlei ba'leilam. So therefore, when he says Tnu Mashatelet Behema Zula Pleni, it's nothing happened because Lepela was Dover Shlei Bo'elam. When a person is Meicher Peiris Dekel Chavere, see if the Peiris didn't start growing at all, so then it's considered a Dover Shlei Bo'elam. Masha'enkin has brought down Nachrenim that if the Peiris started growing already, so since the Peiris are Begoli, it's not like a Uber, which is B'me'ime, it's something which is Begoli, so even though it didn't fully grow yet, but since it started growing, so therefore it's not considered a Dover Shlei Bo'elam, and therefore the Kinyan is Yechal. Halacha Gimel. So we're saying if a person sells something, paid as dekel, so the Kinyan is not Chal, and anyone can have Charata, and there's no din of Mishapar. Aval hapoisek al shasha b'shuk. In other words, he doesn't have the item. A person doesn't, he's selling chitim, he doesn't really have the chitim. But he makes up with this buyer that he's going to provide him chitim according to the price of the shuk. And lepeil, v'lehoya oisi amin shepasek ala b'reshus hamecher. In other words, the min that he made up that he's going to provide him wasn't b'reshus hamecher. So the lekeach is giving the meicher mois to provide him with chitim according to the shar shebeshuk, and lepeil, the moicher doesn't really have these chitim. Nevertheless, so l'chura, that would be also called a davar shlei ba'leilam, like the Rambam will say behemshah, that if a person doesn't own the item, that's also called a davar shlei ba'leilam. But nevertheless, over here there's a din chayev liknes v'litnu lekech mashapasek, because lepeil, since he's able to buy it, there's a shar shebeshuk, so mele there's a gemira's das, even though he doesn't have it bepeil, and therefore there's a din that this kinyan is chal, is nachamos. So when a person buys payers from someone that doesn't have those payers, but lepeil he's making up with him al shar shebeshuk, and he gives him money, so then, or even if he doesn't give him money, if he makes a ma'aser kinyan, so then the din is that that person is mechuyev liknes v'litnu lekech mashapasek. Now ve'im chazar, if lepeil he gave him money, and lepeil he's chayzer after this ma'aser kinyan, so the din is mekabel mishapara. So the person is mekabel mishapara because lepeil there was a kinyan of kesef. So in other words, here we're learning over there there's a kinyan of kesef, even though the item which the person doesn't have in his possession. In other words, the seller is selling an item which he doesn't have in his possession, and he got money for it, and now he has charata, he wants to give the money back. So we say no, but since he became obligated to provide the buyer keshara shabashuk the way they made up, so therefore if he has charata, he's makabel and mishapara. Now the pashas hamashmois of the Rambam is that even if lepeil, the moicher never really bought the item, and those the lekech, let's say, gave the moicher mois, and the deal was that the moicher is going to provide the lekech chitim keshar shebeshuk. Lepeil, the moicher never bought these chitim, and now he wants to have charata and give back the money, because since lepeil he got the money, he has an obligation to provide chitim. So going back on that obligation, that would give him that he would be entitled to this mishapara. And that's the pashtus advarim. That's how Rabbi Akiva learns. But the Ma'aser, the K'tzos holds that's not like that. The K'tzos holds that if the moicher never ended up buying the item, so then he's not really mechuyev mishapara. Only if the moicher actually bought the items. So even though lepeil, when they made the deal, the moicher didn't yet have the item, and then the moicher bought the item, and then the moicher went ahead and had charata, so only then he's mishapara. That's how the K'tzos learns. And the Nesivos argues with the K'tzos as well. So over here, when you read the Rambam bepashtus, it means that if you were placing b'shar shebeshuk, even though the mecher didn't have the item, and lepeil, the mecher later has charata, so he give him a mishapara. That's how the Rebbe Akiva learns. However, the K'tzos learns not like that. The K'tzos holds that if he never owned the item, so therefore he doesn't get a mishapara for not giving the item. Only if he went ahead and sold the item, if he bought the item, so it's keilu, the ma'aser kinyan was chal later, it's keilu, since it was readily available b'shuk, so it's keilu, the ma'aser kinyan that he made before is chal later when he buys the item. At that point in time, he becomes obligated, only after that, he becomes obligated to give it to the lekech, and if he doesn't give it to the lekech, if he has charata, and he wants to give back the lekech his money, only then does he get a mishapar. Halacha daled. Misha posik al shar shebeshuk sheiten arbo soim besela, and im hoyu shibolim. So it knows there's a mitzias where there's already chitim beshuk, and he makes up. He gives him a seller. He gives him a certain amount of money, and the deal is that he's going to provide him this and this amount of chitim per seller. So that's beseder. That is the sale was schal, and he has an obligation to provide it to him. However, if lepeil there's no yet chitim beshuk, and there's already a shar shebeshuk, there's already a price. But the chitim are still in shibbolin, they're still in the stalks. In other words, normally the threshing didn't yet happen. In other words, all the process, there's no real, you can't go into the shuk and to find grain, because the grain wasn't yet processed. So now the question is this kinyan chal? So here it depends, that's the special din. In order for the kinyan to be chal, you need that it should be it should be an extra inyan to show that there is a smichas das. Is here, halacha dal. Mi sheposik al shar shebeshuk, she'itn arbo soim besela, is im hoyu shibolim, if they were still in stalks, the chitim were still in stalks, is hareze kona l'kabel mishabara. Nevertheless, it's still a ma'aser kinyan that lepeil, if he has charata, there's a mishapara. If either of them have charata, sa'iv the kena, sa'iv the mecher has charata, so there's a mishapara. Abavu sheyare lebagel. It has to be that the seller shows the buyer, I have shibolim in the garden already, and I'm going to go thresh it, and I'm going to make it into kernels of wheat, and I'm going to give it to you. So he shows to him that there's a smichas das. Oi, sheyoymale b'shuk, or the buyer is going to say to the seller b'shuk, hareini semach alecha. In other words, I'm buying from you and I'm making a deal with you, and you should know I'm relying on you. It's not like I'm making a deal with you and I'm making a deal with someone else. You should know I'm relying on you. So then we say that even though it's in a matzav of hoyu b'shibolim, and there's no yet the kernels of wheat, but if he showed him the shibolim, or the lekeach told the mecher, hareini semach alecha, so then we assume that there is a smichas das and the kinyan is chal. Aval im lein nirali bagerin, if he didn't show it to him in the gerin, or he didn't have it, and v'liyamrle, and also the lekeach didn't say to the mecher, hareini semach alecha, so then is lisom chadaita shel mecher, so the mecher is not really semach das, that he's really going to sell it, that he's going to really sell it to him, and therefore ve'ene kabel mishapara. So if the mecher or the lekeach have charata, neither of them is mekabel mishapara. Shahri yuwema, because the mecher says shema pasik gemacher ve'ene tzarech chitim elu. In other words, I'm not really sure that he really wants this chitim, because could be he was pasik gemacher and he doesn't need this chitim. So in order that there should be a smichas das of the mecher, that the mecher really it has in mind that he's going to provide these chitim for the lekeach, it has to be that he feels that the lekeach is going to want the chitim. So therefore, if the lekeach told him hareini semach alecha, so then we understand that he's relying on him. So the mecher is semach das. So in other words, there is a musig of a sale. Generally, the din is a person can be mecher a davar shalei boleilam, and that din is also like the Rambam is going to say in halacha hey a davar she'eni b'shusei. He also can be mecher. Masha'in kain, if he's making up with him al shasha b'shuk, he's giving him money for the shasha b'shuk, so that is a ma'aseh kinyan, and it's a ma'aseh kinyan to the extent that it's mechayev a mishapara, and those lapel mois is not kena, so there's a ma'aseh kinyan that it's mechayev a mishapara if any of them have charata, but that's only stamazeh. Masha'in kain, if it's still b'shibolim, so then if he shows him the shibolim begerin, or if it's or the lekeach said hareini semach alecha, so then we assume that there's a smichas das, and then there's takadin mishapara. Mashenkin, if neither of these happened, he didn't show him the shibolim begerin. There was no little shibolim begerin, and he didn't say hareini semach alecha. So then we say there's no real smichas das, and therefore there's no din of mishapara. Halacha hey, davar she'eni b'shusi shel makna, something that the makna doesn't have in his possession, ein a nikna, and also bareu kedavar shlei boleilim ketzad. Mechirah shmi'ah b'machar lecha. So knows he has a father, and he's expecting to yashin. His father is maybe very ill or very old, and he says Mechirah shmi'ah b'machar lecha, or mashetalas mitzudasim min hayam nosen lecha, what will come into my net, or sadazu likshe chena knuy lecha. Is all of these cases lekana klum v'chein kol kietz b'zeh, because just like a person can be makna a davar shlei boleilam, so who adin he can be makna a davar she'eni b'shusah. Now misha hoye merishe goises. The not too long, he was very ill, he was about to die. And Lepel Verotza, this Yairish wanted Limkim in the Chosed Ma'at, Kedei Lehoitzi Hadom B'Tzorch HaKvura, he needed the money for the Tzorch HaKvura. Hail V'Ben Oni, V'Yim Yamtna Chiyomas V'Yimker, it comes out Yishtah HaMez V'Yizbaz, because he doesn't really have money for the Tzorch HaKvura. So if he's going to have to wait until his father dies to be able to sell some of his father's possessions, so it won't be covered for the father. So therefore, tiknu chachamim mocher v'omer masha'ira shmi'av avi hayem mocher lecha. What I'm going to yarshin is mocher lecha. Says then is mukari kaim. So mukari is kaim. Even though he's selling him something, masha'ira, she's saying what I'm going to yarshin, which is l'chura davish leiba leilam. But l'tzeira, because it's in order for the kavod hames, so the Chazal said that in such a case you could be meicher davish leiba leilam. V'chein tzayid ani she'en li mayechel sha'amar. Also, Mashatalim and Ayom Mutsudosi Ayeh Mocherlo knows what my net will have today. That's what I'm selling to you. And Alderazeb and again the Mechirah over there, it's also talking about that the Yerushi is selling of what's going to happen today. So then is Mukari Kaim, and that's also Mishum Kidei Chayv. Halacha Zayin. Haben Shemochar Benichsi Ove B'Chayov. A son went ahead, and he sold his father's Nechosim B'Chayov. And Lepel Umesa Ben B'Chayav. The son died. V'achar kach Mesa Av, and then the father died. So really, the Yerush now is the Ben Aben. The Ben Aben is Yarshin, his grandfather. And Lepel, the son, went ahead and sold already his father's possessions, a possession of his father, to a Lekech, and he gave it to the Lekech, assuming that his father is going to die, and Mamela he's going to Yarshin it, and Mamela he's going to give it to the Lekech. So he already gave it to the Lekech before. So the din is ben aben, meitzim yad alekucha, shari aviv, macher, davish leibo leilam l'shus, bo'adayin l'shusi. His son, the sale of his son was a meaningless sale. Because Lepel, he sold something, wasn't yet b'rishusei. The nimtzah nechosim were b'shusav. The nechosim were always b'shusav. The son never really yashened it, and therefore it never went to the lekech of the son. And v'zeh yeresh aviyaviv, and now the grandson is yashing his grandfather. V'chein kol keitz v'zeh. In other words, the son's sale is meaningless because Lepel, since Lepel the son died, so now the son really never yashened it. So therefore now that the grandson yashens, he could say that the son never had a right to sell it. Now the pashtus of the Rambam sounds like only the grandson could be made miyad al-kuchas. But the son, somehow or another, since he made the sale, so even though Lepel, he made the sale b'chayaviv, when he wasn't allowed to sell it, but Lepel, once he yashens it, so kilu, the sale becomes a good sale. That's the sound, the pashtus of the Lashon HaRambam. But the Magen Mishnah says clearly not like that. The Magen Mishnah writes that even the son could also be made simiyad al-lekech, because since the sale wasn't a proper sale, so memela, the son could be made simiyad al-lekech. Halacha ches, mi shenosen karka matona lechaverei, v'nosen lo al gaba mea dinim. You could be makna someone karka, and al gaba you could be makna kesef. So a person gave someone karka as a matona, and al gaba he also gave him mea dinim. So that's it. Im hoyu had dinim mitzuyim b'rishusei. If those dinim were first of all around, and he had them, it was mitzuyim b'rishusei, is kivan shezacha b'sada. The person that was zecha b'sada is also zacha b'dinim. He's zecha in those dinim which were banned. However, if him ainly dinner, he doesn't have the dinner, then the person that's giving this matana doesn't have the dinner, is ein mechayven es hanoisen litlei mea dinim. You're not mechuyev that the noisen should give the mea dinim. If we don't know for a fact that he actually had the mea dinim. If he had the mea dinim, and he said, I'm being makni the sod and agav the mea dinim, so those mea dinim that he had belongs to the recipient of the matana. But if he never had the mea dinim, so a kinyan agav, it doesn't make a chales chiyuv. It's not pshay. I become mechuyev to your mea dinim because I tell you I'm giving you a karka, and agav the karka I'm giving you a mea dinim. That doesn't create a chales chiyuv. It could only create a hakno if I have the dinim. So he says, "V'im ainli dinner, ein mechayven es haneisen litlei mea dinim." Ad sheyavi azeh cheraya shoyel lezeh dinner beis hamatana. If he could prove that he actually had dinner beis hamatana, so mele be'emes, so he already owned 100 dinim of his, and now he doesn't have it, so he has to pay him back. He has to reimburse him for it. V'hu adin l'shar metaltim shemakna adam esim al karka. If a person is makna other metaltim, that's the kinyan agav, you could be makna agav karka. Is einam b'rshus ha-mechirah hanesin. If it's not b'rshusay, leikonish einam the makna davar sheini b'rshusay. As we said, a davar sheini b'rshusay doesn't only mean not only einam the makna davar shlei b'leilam, but a person could also not be makna davar sheini b'rshusay. Now misha hoyele pikodin b'yadacher, someone that knows it doesn't b'rshusay doesn't have to mean that it's physically in his house. If leposhli gave someone a pikodin, is hareze makneo. So a person could be makna a pikodin of his, which is lying in someone else's possession. Bein b'mecher, bein matana. Why? Lefi sha'pikodin b'shuz ba'olavu. Notice, since that person is holding it for the owner of this pikodin, so this pikodin is considered in the rishus of the original owner, and therefore, and also varei b'cheska shu kaim. We could assume that the pikodin is kaim. So mele, a person could be makna pikodin which yeshli b'yad acherim. However, that's talking about if the person that had the pikodin wasn't kefer b'pikodin. However, if the person that he was mafked the pikodin to claimed that he doesn't really have a pikodin, so then any yochel aknesi, then he can't be makna this pikodin. Why? Now it's as if it's lost, and it's any b'rshusei. The person that was a kefer pikodin, the pasha became a gazlan. A kefer pikodin is a gazlan. So in mela, so it's any b'rshusei. Aval hamilva, that's talking about when we're talking about kesef, which is be'en. So the kesef that's be'en, that's b'rshusei, you can be makna. If it's b'rshus ha-pikodin, if it's a pikodin b'yad, you could also be makna. But on the other end, you can't be mechayiv v'sal v'choiv. Now, what happens if someone owes you money? If someone owes you money, could you be makna that choiv that person has? That's what the Ram is saying. Aval hamilva, but l'peil, if someone owes you money, the money that person owes you is not considered that it's yours anymore. It means even if Lepel, you gave that person money and he didn't spend the money yet. and now you want to be makna that money that person has to you, to someone else. So the din is aval hamilva, and even if that person is maskim, the loiva is maskim. But nevertheless, hamilva heilu litzon nitno, when you gave the milva to the loiver, so you gave it to him to spend, so it became the loiver's money, Eino be'elim, so that's not considered be'elim anymore. It's not, you don't have that money anymore, even if aliba demis is there. Ve'ein adam yochel ha'knesa, to be makna alone, that you lend someone, you can't be makna ele b'mayim shloshim. Because if the three of them are standing, you know, that's even if the money is not paying, there's nachamol. When a person can be makna a pikadon. Or someone took a pikadon, he gave it to someone to hold for him, then he goes ahead and he's makna that pikadon to someone else. Because lepel, that pikadon is considered b'shusis, that's not a problem. A person, if the pikadon, the person that he gave the pikadon to was kaifer b'pikadon, so then that's not considered b'shusis. The Rambam calls it that it's as if it was lost. L'chur, you have to understand, l'chur, it's even more than lost. It was mamash gzela, because that person became a ganef on it. But al kol panim, the Rambam says that it's considered as if it's lost, and therefore it's no longer b'shusei of the mafkid. So that was din number one. Now the Rambam is saying another din, that if a person owes someone money, so therefore, even though Pasha, that money that he owes you is still bad, and you gave him $100, and that person still has the $100, and now you want to be makna those $100 to someone else while it's lying in the rishus of the leva, and B'Pashas, even if the leva is maskim. But nevertheless, Lepel, since once you gave it to the leva, it became the leva's, it's no longer yours. And Mamela, you can't be maknit because it's no longer Ba'elim. You don't have any money Ba'elim anymore. Now the only way you could be makna alone, that you lend someone, and to be makna to someone else, is when we're talking about a milva peh, is only b'maymat shloshim, which means that the malva and the leva are standing, and a third person is standing, and the malva tells the leva, the money that you owe me, you should give to this third person. So even if that money is no longer bad, but it's a special din, that a leva, you could be kaina, a milva, b'maymat shloshim. As the Ram will say, that's a davar, she'en li tam, nachamol. Aval ha-milva, hoyelu lehitzah nitna, a milva, you lend someone money, now you want to be makna that money to someone else, so sehelu lehitzah nitna in a beilam. And therefore, ve'ein adam yochel ha-knesa, you can't be makna a milva, elu b'maymat shloshim. And that din, that you can be makna a milva, b'maymat shloshim, v'hu davar she'en li tam, k'mesha b'yan. Now, v'im hoysa milva, this time if it's a milva al-peh. So the only way to be makna milva al-peh is through maymat shloshim. However, v'im hoysa milva b'shtar, is maknas a star b'ksivu Mechirah, so you can be makna the star to someone. Shariyesh kan dover nimser liknish shib b'shaveh. Since there's a star, so through the hakno of the star, so the person that's being makabel the star is being koina the shibud which is in the star. But that's only if you are makna the star with ksiva Mechirah. As you gave over the star to this new person that's the money is going to be owed to, and also you're on a star that you're giving it over. Halacha Yud, kshem she'en odem makna dover shlei boleilam, kach en odem makna limi shlei boleilam. You can't be makna limi shlei boleilam. Vafilu uber is harehi kemi shlei boleilam. So if a person wants to be mezaker to an uber, so a mezaker lo uber leikona, because lepel the uber has a din of lei boleilam, and therefore you can't be makna. Now v'im hoya b'nei, if the uber was b'nei, is hail the daiti shalodem kreve etzel b'nei is kana. So a regular Uber, you can be makna. Masha'inkin, if this Uber is benoi, so then you could be makna. And the Ram continues, Halach Yedalef, ha'imel ishtei, nechosai lebonim shetel di mimani. Person says that nechosim, which, the nechosim should be to the bonim which you will give birth from me. So the din is harela yiknu klum. Why? Varam shekim sheli nisabrim b'mishas hamatana, adayin libo, k'dei liyesi daiti krevelam. So even though the din is that a person could be makna to his bnoi if she's mu'beres, but that's only if she's already mu'beres. Masha'inkin, if she's not yet mu'beres, so you can't be makna, because lepil, this din of daite kreve etzel bnei is only once she's mu'beres. Masha'inkin, if she's not mu'beres, so there's no din of daite krevelam, which remember, you have to understand. L'chura, when you're being makna to a davar shlei bo le'ilam, l'chura, the pashtus advarim is that there's no chal shem kinyan. How could you be makna to a davar shlei bo le'ilam? L'chura, there was no ma'isa kinyan. There was no kinyan. The kinyan can't be transferred to anyone. There's no one to be koined. That's l'chura the pashtus advarim. Now, when you say that a person is kreve etzel b'noi, so l'chura the pashtus, you're saying like this: be'emes and uber is epis something. It's not nothing. But normally when you're makna l'uber, it's considered davar shlei bo le'elam because it's missing a smichas das. Masha'inkin, if it's eitzel b'nei, so there is smichas das, adam kreve eitzel b'nei. So therefore, so the smichas das, and there's an uber, so therefore you could be koina. But l'chura l'fizeh, if lepel the woman, the mother is not yet mu'beres, so you don't have to explain because there's no smichas das. L'chura the pshat because there's no one to be makna. So in Lashon Rambam, the Rambam says that be'emes there would be a svara that a person can be makna to b'noi even if she's not mu'beres. And nevertheless, the reason why you can't be makna is because there's no smichas das, because adayin libo kedei liyas daiti krevelem, the Rambam says at the end of Allah Yud Aleph. So it sounds like if it would be krevelem, it would help, even if there's no uber. L'chura who you're being makna to. You have to understand that the pshat is that be'emes the ma'aseh kinyan l'chura should be able to chal. You have to understand how it works. So making a ma'aseh kinyan, and the kinyan is going to chal after the pale. Right now there was no one to be koina, so you want that right now you should make a ma'aseh kinyan, and to be koina later on when the uber is born. I mean, where's the kinyan? Where's the ma'aseh kinyan? L'chura it's called kinyan. What kind of kinyan do you have that lapel is happening even later also? You have to understand. But I'll call upon that's what it says in the Rambam. So the halakha is clear that if there's an Uber, you can't be makna to an Uber unless it's your Uber, because Adam kreve etzel b'nei. Masha'inkin, even if it's yours, but it's only if it's already an Uber. Masha'inkin, if a person says Masha Teldi and there was no Uber yet, so then it won't help even if it's your own son. Halacha Yud Beis. Hamakna lemin memine chaya is lehikna klum. You can't be makna to a chaya. Hikne ktsas nechosav lebehema ila mishalei bo le'elam. And then v'chosav v'omer lechaveri knei kebehema zu eku uberzel likana klum. In other words, he says knei kebehema zu. So the behema wasn't kena, the lei bo le'elam wasn't kena. So meila al derazel, whoever you're saying this to is also not kena. However, omer le knei at ubehema zu oy at v'uberzel. He wants to be makna to two. One of them is a regular person, and the other one is someone that can't be kena, either because he's labeled la'elam an uber or a behema, which is not a bar kinyan. So then, since you're being makna to two people, and one of those to two entities, I'll call it, and one of them is not a bar kinyan, so therefore the one that is a bar kinyan is kana machza. L'pel is kana machza. Halacha Yud Gimel. Ein oda makna lei b'mecher v'lei b'matona ela davar sheyesh b'mamish. You have to sell a zach, give us something. Aval davar she'eni b'mamish, if it's something that ain't b'mamish, ain't a nikna ketzad. Ein oda makna reach hatapuach hazeh, that the smell of this apple is yours. A tam hadvash hazeh, the taste of this honey is yours. Oy ein abdel hazeh, the color of this crystal is yours. V'chein kol ki eitz b'zeh. So when a person says the smell of this apple is yours, it makes a ma'aseh kinyan. Or the taste of this dvash is yours. Or the color of this bdelech is yours is meaningless. Lefichach hamakna lechaveri achilas peiras dekel zeh, oidiras bayis zeh. So that's also not considered a davar sheresh b'mamish. In other words, living somewhere is not called a davar sheresh b'mamish, and also eating is not considered a davar sheresh b'mamish. A davar sheresh b'mamish is the peri, not the eating. You own the peri to eat, but the inyan of eating is not something you could own. You can't own the eating of the peri. You can't own, just like you can't own the smell of the apple, you can't own the color of the crystal, you can't own the eating of the peiros, or the living of the house. You could own the house to live in, but you can't own the living of the house. So that says then you can't be makna davar shlei a davar she'ein b'mamish. You have to understand a little bit. What would be, let's say, if I could be makna a reach hatapuach? In other words, a person owns an apple. That apple has a smell. So you say the person that owns the apple also owns the smell of the apple. Good. So what does he have by owning the smell of the apple? Could he stop someone from smelling the apple? Is that the pshat? The person owns the smell of the apple, so he has like a right to say maybe the smell of this apple is usher on you. So since I own it, normally you can't stop someone from smelling someone's item. You say, I could usher, bano maybe I could say the smell of this apple, if this is good smell, is usher on you. Now if I go ahead and I'm makna the smell of the apple, so maybe that person should have a right to be able to usher the smell of the apple. So we say, no, ain't no the makna, davar she'ein b'mamish. It's hard to understand. I mean, I'm being makna the color of this crystal. what does someone own when he owns the color of a crystal, and what are you saying that he doesn't own it? In other words, there would be a svara he does own it, and you're saying no, he doesn't own it. The question is, what would he own, and what are we saying he doesn't own? It's hard. You have to understand. The color of the crystal. I'll call upon him. That's the din. You can't be makna davar she'ein be mamish, and as a result of that, you can't be makna the eating of an apple, an eating of something, or also the living in a house. You can only be makna the house to live in, or the food to eat. Halacha tezvov dina hegdish v'din ha'aniyim v'din ha'nedarim einei kedina hedid b'kniyose. These dinim that we were learning about a davar shlei bala elam legabi a hedid b'kniyose, that doesn't apply to hegdish or aniyim and nedarim, which means she'ilu amar adam kol ma shetelud behemti yiyeh hegdish l'medek habayis. When a person is makna ma shetelud behemti, so we say that kna is not chal. But if a person says kol ma shetelud behemti yiyeh hegdish l'medek habayis, or yiyeh osir alai, which that would be a din of nedarim, or yetnana l'tzedakah, which is a din of tzedakah, is aval pi she'enim iskadish lefi she'enei be'olam, even though bepeil mamish there was no chala, a chales hegdish on the item, because it was any be'elam, and vice versa, even when it comes to olam, it also doesn't become a chales hegdish, because lepeil, since when you said it, it wasn't be'elam, so memele, even when it becomes be'elam, is not chala Hashem hegdish. Nevertheless, arei zechayev l'kayim dvora shenamar kechol hayetzi mepiv yasa. V'heil v'adavar kein, tziva adam shu shchiv mirav v'omer, kol ma sheyetzi ilan zeh, shego la'aniyim, a kol schar bayezeh shego la'aniyim. So l'chura, the schar bayezeh is not here yet. It's not a davar sheyesh ba'elam. He's not saying the bias l'dir. He's saying any money that this house will generate goes to the aniyim, or any fruit that this tree will generate should go to the aniyim. So the din is zachu bo aniyim. So the aniyim were zeicha, and you have to give it to the aniyim. So that's this din, that by hegdish and al derech zeh by nedarim and al derech zeh by tzedakah, there's no din of ein adam no the davar shlei bo leila. It's not. There's no din of ein that you can't be. You can't commit yourself to a davar shlei bo leila. So when the hegdish, the Rambam said it wasn't chal d'sham hegdish. It wasn't chal d'sham hegdish, but on the other hand, there's a chal of a chiyuv to give to the hegdish. Now there is a chiyuv to give to tzedakah, and a chiyuv to give to the aniyim, and a give to aniyim. Now yesh ge'enim shechelkim al darazeh, ve'enim she'einu aniyim zeichen, ela b'dvarim shehedit kein b'am. So just like if a person is makna, a davar shlei bo le'elam, so it's not hakna. So when a person commits himself to tzedakah on a davar shlei bo le'elam, there's no chiyuv tzedakah. Ulefichach le yisku b'davar shlei bo le'elam. But on that the Rambam says, "Ve'im daiti netel ledvarim elu," because she'ein adam mitzvah lahaknas, because there's no mitzvah, there was no chiyuv to be makna to anyone. So therefore, by doing what he did, there was no mitzvah accomplished. And on the other hand, the ma'aseh kinyan didn't either happen because it was the davar shlei bo le'elam. Aber v'mitzvah lekayim dvarav b'tzedakah ei behegdish k'meishu mitzvah lekayim anedek k'meishu b'yarnu be'erchem. So therefore, the Rambam holds that there is chalat tzivui even on the davar shlei bo le'elam. So we're learning over here that there's a machlekes when a person, the Rambam brings the machlekes. First he brings the din of a shchiv mirah, that a shchiv mirah said, kol ma sheyetzi ilun zel aniyim, a kol schar baya zel aniyim, is zochu b'emo aniyim. And then the Rambam says, yesh ge'im shechilkum al ve'emrim, she'einu aniyim zeichem b'em. Now the ma'aseh is that l'chura, there's two dinim over here. There's one shaila is a din l'mashal on the person. There's a person committed himself. He says, kol ma shetelid behemti yiyeh hegdish l'medek habayis. So, or he says yiyeh osir alai or etnanu l'tzedakah. So l'chura, when a person says etnanu l'tzedakah, so l'chura it's a chiyuv on himself. He's being mechayiv himself. A person could be mechayiv himself to do something. He's not doing something on the chefetz. In other words, when a person says yiyeh hegdish l'medek habayis, like in the beginning of halacha tezvav, so then the question is, was it chal hegdish? So the Rambam said beferish it wasn't chal hegdish. Because since it's not ba'elam, it's not chal hegdish. So what's ken yechal is areza chayiv lekal and dvarish nemik chaleis mipavyasa. And l'chura, that's l'chura poshet. Whereas the whole deal over here is that when a person is makna something, so it is not just a question of being makayim dvarav. The question is if the hakno was chal. So we say since we're dealing with a davar shlei bo le'elam, the hakno wasn't chal, and that din applies here as well. But on the other hand, when a person is not dealing with being makna the zach. A person's over here, the question is, he himself, it's a din in him. He is mechuyev to give it to Hegdish. He is mechuyev to give it to tzedakah. or he's asking it on himself. So Memela, since he's asking on himself, so therefore he could answer on himself because he's Ba'ilam. Now, when it comes to a Shchiv Mirah, Lachet Zayin, so he says, Kol Mashiyetzi Ilun Zel Anim. Again, he's saying that it should be given to the Anim. He's being makna. So but over here, the Rambam says, Zochu Bem Anim. Over here, L'chura, you can't say that he became Mechuyev to give it to the Anim. Because we're talking about a Shchiv Mirah. The Shchiv Mirah died. So L'chura, where did the Yorshim have a Chiyuv? So you're going to have to say that over here, that's a Hemshech of this din. Whereas in the Halachat Ezvav L'chura, we're speaking about the Chiyuv of the person to do what he said. And then from that, V'heil Adavar Kein, Halachat Design, comes the next halacha. That when he's a Shchiv Mirah, so it's Taka Zochu Ba'anim. The Rebbe talks about this in L'kut Sichas, about this Nekuda, in L'kut Sichas Chelik Chav Zayin. He's medayik from the Lashon Zochu B'Maniyim, that Aniyim was Zeich. It's not only a Chiyuv to give it, because L'pel the Yorshim don't have a Chiyuv to give it. They never said anything. The only reason why they have a Chiyuv to give it is because what he said was Chal. And on that, Yesh Geinim Shechilkin, they're arguing saying no. It was never Chal anything. The fact that he had something of his, it was Psachiv on the Gavra, but L'chura on the Chefza, nothing happened. And on that, the Rambam is saying no. Ve'in daiti neitel l'dvarim elu. You have to understand what she'ein adam mitzuvah l'haknas, v'hu mitzuvah l'kayim dvarim b'tzdoke b'hegdesh k'mishu mitzuvah l'kayim haneder k'mishu bi'arnu be'erchem. And as a result of that, because he is mitzuvah, so somewhere or another it's nimshach on the chefza as well. You have to understand this a little bit. But I'll call upon him, it's clear the halacha. The halacha is that the Rambam says by hegdesh, when a person says kol mashetelid behemti, yeh hegdesh by the kabayas, or yeh osir olay et nanu l'tzdaka, so dvar of kayamim, and memeli is mechuyev l'kayim nidre, and as a result of that, the Rambam says the next din, b'negei ashchiv mirah, that a person says yet nanu, so it's also chayev l'kayim dvarav. Then the Rambam says yesh ge'enim shechilkum al davar zeh, that they're not zeicha in this case of the shchiv mirah, and on that the Rambam says that daiti neita, that they are zeicha. And why? Because there was a chiyuv for him to give it to the aniyim.